and welcome back to my video. Today we're going to be doing a spoiler review of The June Boys by Court Stevens. The June Boys is a psychological thriller about the Gemini thief who takes 3 boys every June. And it's about Thea, who is determined to find her cousin Alice after he got taken. I'm not a big fan of psychological thrillers because they mess with my mind, as per the title. But this one was really fascinating in the way that it combined both like the story elements of Thea narrating and then Alice's letters that he was writing from being kidnapped, which I thought was super fascinating, the way like they tied together. So this review will be taking place in 2 parts. It will be the non-spoiler review, and then it will be the spoiler review if you have read The June Boys. If you haven't read The June Boys and you don't mind being spoiled, then you can keep watching. But if you haven't read The June Boys and you really want to read it, go read it first and then you can come back and watch this review. Alright, let's get started. And now for the non-spoiler review portion of this video. June Boys was really good. I thought it was super fascinating. I liked the way that like the letters and Thea's perspective tied together. I had a couple of problems with it. There were a couple like inconsistencies that weren't really talked about till later in the book, which just left you feeling really confused and you couldn't really get into the story because you didn't really understand what was happening. I don't like that. I like things to be like explained firsthand, and if if I'm confused, I'm not gonna be like wondering what's gonna happen next. I'm gonna be wondering what is going on. Like, that's not really a good way to be. I feel like that's, after finishing the book, I understood why the author did it, but it wasn't like, I didn't like that she did it. So I think overall probably gonna give it 7.5 out of 10. If you have read June Boys, you can keep watching. If you haven't, go read the book. I recommend it to people who like psychological thrillers. If you don't, keep watching, I guess. Or you can leave and watch the next video next week. Now the spoiler review. Spoiler review will be divided into 3 parts: plot, characters, and the thrillerness / consistency of the novel. Spoiler warning, I will go into detail about what happens in the book, and I will spoil who the Gemini thief is. So if you haven't read The June Boys, go read it. It's really good. I really liked it overall. I had some problems with it, but overall I thought it was a really good book. So if you like that kind of like thriller, psychological, like mind games kind of book, I would go read it. Alright, now let's get started with plot. Plot was really good. Alice's letters interconnecting with Thea's story with her and her friends was super fun. I didn't get when it was taking place. Like, I thought that Alice's letters were taking place around the same time as Thea was trying to find him, which didn't make sense with where Tank was as a person. Like, his Tank was with Thea, but Tank was also with Alice, and it was just so confusing. Like, maybe I just missed something when I was reading, but I just didn't understand it. So I didn't like that. I did like the kind of like mystery that we didn't really know. We didn't really get any clues of who the actual killer was. And if you haven't read this book in a while, the killer was Ruby, Thea's foster parental mother figure person. Foster's not the right word. They weren't legitimately. But Ruby and her husband, name I've forgotten, did help raise Ruby a lot, or not raise Ruby, raise Thea a lot, so I guess kind of, okay, so it's parental figure. But Ruby was a killer, and I didn't like that. Oh my gosh, I can't speak today. I like that we didn't really get that Ruby was going to be the killer. Like, we didn't really like see her breaking down that much, but we did get a few clues. Like, looking back on it, we did get clues, like Ruby crying in the bed, and Ruby kind of like breaking down, like physically, which was super fascinating, like now looking back on it. But like reading the book, I really like that we didn't really like see that at all. And I feel like that's more of a character discussion. But I really liked that like the plot was super like well thought out. Like from start to end, there wasn't like any like strands that didn't get, like, it all like tied together in the end, which was really nice. I like books like that, which is good, because if it didn't like end nicely, then probably would have gotten a lower rating. And that's all my thoughts on the plot. Next up, characters. I really like talking about characters. I like their character arcs. I like watching like them like grow throughout the book. And Thea, just as a character, is super fascinating because she's kind of a morally gray character. Like, she wants to do what's right, for herself and her family. Like, she doesn't care about the greater good. She wants her family back with her, which is a really fascinating, like, road to take for a character because you don't really see it that often. And then, let's see, other characters in this book. Nick, right? That's his name. I definitely know exactly who all these characters are. Yes. Nick? I'm gonna cut all of this out. Yes, it is Nick! Ha! Nick as a character was super fascinating because he wasn't morally gray like Thea. He wanted to do what was right for everybody. It's more of like a crowd pleaser, which is super nice to see, like, because Thea and Nick kind of like balance each other out. And even though there's not like a lot of like, you get to see them like being like a couple, like, I didn't understand that they were a couple till like 20 pages in because they didn't really act like that, which was kind of a nice like break from like the lovey-dovey couples that you normally see. But and there was not a but. And they kind of like balanced each other out, which was super nice. It was like a nice like binding. Gladys and Tank were super fun characters because you didn't really know much about them. Like, I feel like I didn't really know Gladys that well throughout the entire book, other than she's best friends with Thea. She dates Tank. Really it. Like, that's really all we know about Gladys. But she was a super fascinating character to watch because we didn't know, like, she could be it. Like, we didn't know anyone could be the Gemini thief, which was super fascinating to, like, think about when you're reading the book because you don't know who's going to be, like, taking him and who's not. So that was super fascinating to see. Dawn. Thea's dad was the most indescribable character I've ever met. Like, one moment he's like the best dad ever. Like, when we saw like the scene where he was letting Thea stay up and eat ice cream, like, that was super like nice. Like, I wish I had a dad that would let me stay up and eat ice cream at like midnight. That's amazing. But then the next moment, you know, he's lying to her about building a giant castle. Like, how does that balance out? Like, is he a good person or not? We don't know. Which was super fascinating to like read about because all you see, like, most times you see, like, I'm not bashing on any of the characters that I'm not talking about. Most characters that you read about only want to do what's right. They want what's best for the people. They want overall how it's going to help the world. Thea didn't. Thea wants what's best for her and Alice and her friends. That's it. That's all she cares about. And Don wants to build a castle. Like, that's his whole character drive, is he wants the castle to be built. That's solely it, which was super fascinating to read about. Because none of these characters are really there for the right reasons. Like, they all have their own personal motivations, which was super fascinating to read about. Tank, as a character, was so confusing. Like, I didn't understand half of what I was reading because I didn't understand what Tank's role was. He was just there. I, for like half the book, thought he was legitimately the Gemini thief because he just didn't do anything. I know we had his like letters with him and Alice being in the wherever they were, but I still legitimately thought he was a Gemini thief because he was so suspicious. And also, I didn't understand him being with Alice's letters and him with Thea until, like, you know, he got captured, which was super frustrating, by the way. I wish I had known that the letters didn't take place at the same time as Thea. So that was kind of disappointing. Didn't like that. But Tank was such a fascinating character because you could tell he cared about Gladys and Thea and kind of about Nick. Nick was new. Nick wasn't part of their group yet. But you could tell he cared about both of the late girls in this book, but not that much. Like, he cared, yeah, but overall, what was his drive? I didn't know what his drive was. I couldn't tell you what his like motivation or drive was as a character, which was kind of frustrating for me because I like knowing what a character is trying to get to and if they're gonna get to that goal. I don't know. Did Tank ever achieve his goal? I mean, he got out of the mess that he was in with Alice and the Zared Rufus? Yes, Zared and Rufus, that's their names. Nah, it was Zared and Rufus. Oh my god, that's so exciting. Okay. But Tank was super confusing. Like, he was a really nice character to read about in Alice's letters, but in Thea's point of view, he just seemed like a completely different person, which was fascinating, but confusing. Like, I thought that either Tank was a hallucination that, like, Alice was having, or that he was just a clone. Or that the one that Thea knew was fake, just not the real Tank. I don't know. I went through so many, like, questionable things with Tank. Like, I thought he was the murderer. I thought he was a Gemini thief. I thought he was gonna, like, sell everyone out. I thought he was gonna kidnap Thea and Gladys and Nick. No, he didn't do any of that. He was kidnapped himself. But I didn't know that. So, that was kind of confusing. Otherwise, I really liked Tank. The small amount of knowledge I had about him. But, I don't know. He was nice. He kept Alice from going insane. So I thought that's a good thing. I liked Alice. I thought he was fun. So, Alice! That's what I forgot to talk about. Alice was a great character. He was morally right. Like, all he was trying to do was save Zared and Rufus and try to get them out. He didn't care about himself. He didn't care about, and kind of cared about Tank. But he wanted Zared and Rufus, who were probably, I think, like 13 to 15. He wanted them to be saved. Too bad they were a hallucination, which, oh my God, I hate when they do that. It messes with my mind so much. Zared and Rufus also were a hallucination, and I didn't like that because I liked both of them a lot. And they were really fun characters. Like, they were like, it was kind of like a breath of like fresh air whenever we like saw them like just hanging out and not doing like, not like worrying about like starving to death or anything, which was super nice. But also, why did they have to be hallucinations? Author, that was really mean. Ruby and her husband, was that whole plot twist at the end with like Ruby being the one to try and shoot Nick was just, oh my God. And then Thea got shot. It was just insane. I never suspected Ruby. I thought that it was Ruby's husband from like, I think like page 200. How many pages are in this book? There's 300 pages in this book. From like page 200, I thought that I thought that Ruby's husband was going to be the killer, because that was where it felt like it was pointing, and then Ruby's husband was just being really suspicious. So, I don't know. I liked the plot twist, but I thought it was kind of fell flat. Like, I had higher expectations for like who the Gemini kill thief was going to be, but Ruby kind of like it made sense, and like, it fit together really nicely. So that's all for the character portion of this review. Next up is the consistency of the novel. And lastly is the consistency of the book / like the more thriller parts of it. I had higher expectations for this book. I kind of expected more of like a thrillery type of book, like The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which was, by the way, super good. If you liked the June Boys, or you just like mystery thriller types, Good Girl's Guide to Murder is so good. I love that book. But we're talking about the June Boys. I thought it kind of fell flat. Like, there wasn't much. I wasn't scared while reading it. Like, I wasn't nervous for the characters. I wasn't nervous for like my own life if I was gonna get murdered by the Gemini thief. No, I am female, and it is May. So clearly it fell flat. I would kind of hope for more of like a thriller type of book. As it like progressed, I guess, like the last 50 pages were kind of nerve-wracking, but it still didn't strike me as like a thriller type of book. When I finished it, it was kind of like I didn't want to go to bed because I was afraid I was going to get kidnapped, but that still wasn't like as much as like horror books that I have read. So that was kind of disappointing. I had like high expectations for it. The consistency of the book itself was so good. Like, everything fit together in the end, which was super nice to like read, especially for like most thriller novels where there's kind of like at least a few loose ends. Like, this book tied everything up neatly. Both of those words. It tied everything up really nicely, and I feel like that's kind of hard to find. I didn't like the lack of information we got on Alice's letters that he was writing. Like, who is Elizabeth Smart? Like, what connection does she have to the plot? No connection whatsoever, which was disappointing. And like, I kind of like hoped that they would like find her in like the end, and like Alice would be like giving her letters or something, because I didn't understand her point in the story. Like, that was just kind of a part that we didn't need. which I hated. I didn't like that part. But overall, super good book. The consistency was really nice. It fit together super nicely, and the book was really good. So 7.5 out of 10 is my rating for it. And that's the end of this spoiler review. I hope you enjoyed. If you're new here, please leave a like and subscribe down below. Please comment what your favorite psychological thriller or just your favorite thriller book is in general. I do read your comments and they mean a lot to me, so thank you. That's all I have for you today. Please subscribe. I make videos every Sunday. Have a great day.